So in that last video I went over some exciting games that are coming out in March that are coming down the pike for the Steam Deck, or at least for Steam I guess I should say, since we don't always know how well a game will perform until we get it in hand and can actually test it. But nonetheless, before we march too far into March, that also sounds kind of weird, I did want to look back at some of the games that I picked up in February, and the first one on this list is actually one that I have started on the Nintendo Switch, but I'm really hoping to finish it on the Steam Deck, and that is Darksiders 2. So far I've beaten the original Darksiders and loved my time with War, but then rather than move on to 2 and 3, I actually went backwards and beat Genesis, which is a very different game as a top-down action affair, but I really loved it even if Strife sort of came off like a Diet Star-Lord sometimes. And overall I have to say I've really enjoyed my limited time with the series, and I really want to see what happens in 2, because in 2 you get to play as Death. Kicking off with some good old-fashioned vengeance, Death is on a mission to seek out his brother War from the first game, who has been falsely accused of wiping out humanity. That's about all I know about the game and all I really want to know so far, since again I haven't beaten it before. And again, in truth I did start this game on the Nintendo Switch, but it was a really rough experience when I played it there. Now maybe it got patched later, but with sluggish performance and knowing in the back of my mind that I could definitely play this one in greater fidelity, it sort of left Darksiders 2 kind of sliding into my backlog. But now I have a copy on the Steam Deck, and while I've only played it a little bit so far, it is a night and day difference against what I experienced on the Switch, and I can't wait to dive into more otherworldly action in what, well, really feels like a dark gothic Zelda of sorts, just in an almost comic book style on the visual front. And speaking of sequels to games that I finished previously, this next one is much lighter in tone than the Darksiders series, and that would be New Super Lucky's Tale. Now I actually had to look this up because I've always been a little bit hazy on exactly what this game is. Like, I played Lucky's Tale originally on the Oculus Rift and I loved it, but apparently this is kind of a sequel to the original Lucky's Tale. And I say kinda because it's a remake of the sequel to that, because the original sequel was Super Lucky's Tale, and this is New Super Lucky's Tale, which is supposed to have a range of improvements over the original effort. And considering I just mentioned in that PS1 Games for Deck video that I really wanted some lighter fare that harkens back to those early 3D days, New Super Lucky's Tale felt like the perfect way to experience just that. I mean, it definitely does not have low poly visuals, and everything here looks like it's ripped straight out of a storybook, but that soul of 3D platformers from my youth like Super Mario 64 or Banjo-Kazooie really ring true here. By most accounts it's a fairly simple game and not necessarily exceptional, but the original Lucky's Tale sure was great, and I'm expecting some breezy platforming with charming characters and tight controls, and so far that's exactly what it's giving me. In Lucky's Tale you'll follow Lucky Swifttail, a fox on a mission to find his inner strength and help his sister to protect the Book of Ages, a tome within which exists entire worlds and characters. Performance on the Steam Deck was expectedly solid, and I think it's set to medium settings out of the gate, and that was giving a solid 60 FPS. However, I did go ahead and bump it up all the way to the ultra settings, and it still did a pretty good job of keeping that 60 FPS. Occasionally it would drop down to the 50s a little bit, but it did so pretty infrequently and really didn't serve as much of a distraction for me. I suppose I could go ahead and lock the frame and refresh rates to like 50 or 40 if I really wanted to smooth it out more, but honestly it played so great even at the ultra settings that it really didn't, make a huge difference or anything. Next up is a title that is incredibly solid as a game, but admittedly as a Steam Deck game, it's a little bit dicey. But it really didn't bother me that much because the game was, again, so fun when I played it on the PS5 that I really didn't bat an eye at picking up another copy just so I could play it in the handheld format, and that is Hogwarts Legacy. Now this was a very interesting experience because I think this is the first time since Elden Ring, which weirdly also came out around a year ago this time, where I enjoyed a game so much that I was willing to buy another copy so I could play it on a different platform. However, since this is a single player adventure, the only thing compelling me to drop more coin on the PC version was the idea of playing it in the handheld form factor. Which, yeah, I could wait until June for the Switch version, but based on what I've seen so far, I'm guessing it's going to be really rough because, while it does run passably on the deck so far, it's definitely not the ideal way to experience Hogwarts Legacy. Although if you're a Harry Potter fan, you definitely should experience it because it's one of the best licensed games that I've played, right up there with Spider-Man 2018 in my book. And it really does feel like you're telling your own story in the wizarding world rather than just rehashing what fans know from the books or movies, considering it's set about 100 years before those events. But make no mistake, there are still a boatload of little Easter eggs and nods to what you already know. Now, I won't waste time going over everything that's great about Hogwarts Legacy because I'm sure a million other reviewers have kind of already laid that stuff out. I'll just say that while I expected it would be a pretty good game, I was definitely not prepared that it would be a kind of Game of the Year candidate for me, and it definitely is. At least on PS5. Putting aside the PC gamers kinda got the short end of the stick with some questionable performance at launch, the Steam Deck version is definitely playable, but the compromises are definitely noticeable. It can be rough to keep a consistent 30 frames per second, and the visual cutbacks you make to get there make the whole thing look like there's kind of Vaseline smeared over the frame. Playing Hogwarts Legacy on the deck kind of reminded me of what it felt like to play Witcher 3 on the Switch. Like, yeah, it's a totally playable experience and everything, but you really can't help the nagging feeling that you probably should be playing it on beefier hardware. However, that being said, these compromises really do sort of recede into the background once you get into the thick of gameplay, and just like I didn't have any problem putting around 40 hours or so into The Witcher 3 on Switch, I also will have no problem putting tons and tons of hours into my new Slytherin character I've created on the deck. Now, I'm sure there are some tweaks I could do to maybe push it to 40 FPS with some tinkering, but for now I'm content to run Burn Mistopheles at a pokier 30 FPS and to experience all of the magic again. And finally, this last pickup really isn't a pickup per se. It's kind of a cheat for me to say that. It's just a demo for a game that I will absolutely pick up. But honestly, I had so much fun playing the demo that I really wanted to make sure that I brought it up somewhere on the channel, because I think anybody who's a fan of Resident Evil should play this game, and that is Echoes of the Living. First off, as much as this thing is pitched as a loving homage to Resident Evil, I gotta say it really looks like they just straight up copied Capcom's homework here, and I am definitely here for it. The plot is that in 1996, in a small town in Northern Europe, a mysterious fog suddenly engulfs the town. Shortly thereafter, the locals get sick, the dead start roaming the streets, and it's up to you to get to the bottom of things. You can play as either Liam Oakwood or Laurel Reeves, and I think they are cops. I'm not 100% clear on this. Especially considering the demo starts off pretty abruptly with a literal bang and you're just off to trying to survive hordes of zombies on the chaos of the city streets a la Resident Evil 2 and 3. And man, this game has it all if you're hungry for horror like it's 1996. Fixed camera angles, tank controls, limited saves, it's all there but crucially in Unreal Engine, and it looks absolutely fantastic. So far in the couple of hours that I've spent messing around with the demo, it seems like it's keeping a solid 60 FPS as well, which definitely bodes well for its eventual release, which I think tentatively is just set for sometime later in 2023. I mean, I guess it makes sense that it would perform well given like the pre-rendered backgrounds and fixed camera approach, but still, it was just really exciting to see a game that really harkened back to that old school kind of retro sort of survival horror and just execute it so well even in this early form. And truthfully, I don't think I've been as excited for a game like this since I beat Tormented Souls a couple of years back, and if you want to see what it's all about, I highly recommend you also go pick up the demo right now because this is shaping up to be a real treat. And again, the cherry on top is that even in this early access form, it's still performing pretty steady, so I can only imagine what it's going to look like when it finally launches later this year. I mean, assuming it does launch later this year because, delays do happen. And finally, one last bonus that I want to throw in here before wrapping things up. This doesn't technically qualify as a pickup because I did not get this for Steam. Rather, the game Wanted Dead is out right now, and I actually, reached out to the publisher and said, hey, would you mind kicking me a code? They did, albeit only for the PlayStation 5, so I have only played it there so far, and it's a whole lot of fun. Now, it's a jank sort of fun, right? It's kind of like a campy B-movie sort of fun, but I have to say the mechanics are actually a lot more solid than I think a lot of people are giving it credit for. Now, it is available on the Steam Deck. I've seen some other videos floating around where it looks like it performs there, pretty well. I just have not played it there myself, so I can't really speak to it. All I can say is I'm having a whole lot of fun with it on PS5, and if you're somebody who really appreciates, again, just like campy action games from that kind of mid-2000s era, Wanted Dead is definitely worth a look, and I'm enjoying it so much I kind of want to do a dedicated video on it, and I may do that at some point, but yeah, don't sleep on Wanted Dead. It's definitely fun as long as you appreciate that sort of game, I guess. So, alright, and that's it for this one. Not every single game that I picked up in February, but definitely some of the highlights and ones that I've been enjoying the most. So, what about you? Did you grab anything great for the Steam Deck or otherwise? I would love to hear what you've been playing. As always, thank you so much for your time. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one.